Hey guys, it's a Cold One here, and today I'm bringing you a bit of a different style of video. I'm going to be reviewing my old Colosseum PB from back in August of last year, with a time of 1538. While I was going through my clips for my new series, I found that I had this saved and figured I could use it to explain my thought process, how I tackle certain waves, go over some lesser known mechanics and strategies, and perhaps help you guys improve at the Colosseum. So for starters, let's talk about my gear choices. We have the typical 8-way melee and range switch, as these are our primary DPS styles, and we have a 3-way for magic with the saturated heart. Now this one is purely preference in my opinion, but I prefer the saturated heart because you can one-hit the Berserker Fremi without using any offensive prayers. You can bring an Ancestral Hat instead of the heart and use prayer as an alternative, but the saturated heart is just what I prefer. Next we have both sets of claws, and you don't have to bring both, but I find that they each have times where one is better than the other. Two reasons I'll go over when they come up in this run, and the third simply being if you need to secure a kill because of reinforcement timings, the Dragon Claws will do a little bit better in a pinch rather than their burning counterpart. Next is the Saradomin Godsword. Personally, I am not a fan of this item, as its most optimal use is for guaranteeing a max hit on the range Fremi for a big heal. Typically, when you're running Colosseum speeds, you already have the wave solved by the time you're hitting the third Fremenic, and if you need hit points, then we have the Blood Fury to solve that problem throughout the wave. While learning how to speedrun, having this is fine, but I'd get used to bringing an Amulet of Rancor in its place. While we're on the topic of swapping for the purpose of learning, you'll notice there's zero food in the setup at all, and that can be a bit scary. If you're not as confident with this setup, you can substitute the Misori Mask and Venator Ring for a Saradomin Brew and regular Super Combat. This will drop your max hit with the Venator Bow from 39 to 38, and make the subsequent bounces drop from 26 to 25 as well, but it's not the biggest deal in the world when you're just trying to learn how to get into things. Last thing on the list I want to talk about is the one-handed melee weapon. All that's important is that you can hit a 50 with it. It does not matter if it's a rapier, blade, or mace, they are all the same here. So without further ado, let's get into the run. First things first, standardize dropping 2 potions to take runes out of our shadow. Since we have Fire, Cosmic, Blood, and Death runes in our pouch, which covers Thralls, we still need Soul runes to be able to cast Death Charge. You'll see there's an automated selection to refill it here. You can get that on the RuneLite plugin hub, and it's called Charge Calculator. The Chaos runes aren't needed, so we can leave those on the floor for the rest of the run. The first thing I'm going to talk about here is my starting position. I am on the southeast tile of the northwest pillar. This gives me the positioning I need to be able to reach an NPC right away after dealing with the starting Fremenics. Right after our first strike, we want to run straight towards the Shaman. In this example, he actually spawned as far away as humanly possible, and we're still able to reach him in time without losing any ticks. Now, something worth mentioning here, this is not exactly how I'd handle this wave nowadays. While it was a really good wave 1 and seemed almost perfect, there's a way to get it just a tiny bit faster. In this example, we start out the same exact way, but our first strikes on the Shaman is going to be 2 Venator Bows instead of leading with the Dragon Claw spec. This makes it so the last thing we do is not only a melee hit, but one that can generate overkill. This gives you a 13.2 second wave 1. While only 1 tick faster than the wave 1 in this replay, it's still save time and worth pointing out. Wave 2, we're going to have a range gear setup with the 3-way magic again for the Fremenic, and we want to run down immediately to the Shaman first. We have enough time to attack on the first tick with our Shadow, then do one more attack and step under the Shaman to off-tick it. In this case, we're too far away from the Shaman to do that, so we want to hit it with the Twisted Bow a single time and eat a hit, then Venator and step under after. Now, Twisted Bow isn't the best DPS against the Rangers, but in cases like this where I don't reasonably have enough time to react and switch into my full melee gear, doing one hit with a Twisted Bow is perfectly fine. With any leftover Fremenics in this case, we want to clear them out with the Venator, even though we are guaranteed a max hit with melee. This is still worth to do because of how strong Venator Bow is. We use 1 Burning Claw spec on this wave because it will line up with our special attack usage in the future, and also helps us secure the Wave 2 skip. The opener for Wave 3 is the same as Wave 2, nothing new to see here. And showing that I'm true to my word as well, Venator Bowing with the ranged Fremenic is worth it overall. Now, I'm going to criticize myself a bit here. I made a mistake with this wave, so if we go back a bit, what I could have done is run over to the northwest pillar and DPS the Southern Ranger with the Twisted Bow for 2 hits. This would have pulled the Eastern Ranger closer to the middle, and more importantly, closer to the reinforcement gate. This is important for what we're about to see here. The Jaguar comes out, and where are we? middle of the arena, and not using Venator Bow on his arrival because he's too far away. Thankfully, in this particular run, I'm being saved by ridiculously good luck on hits, so I'm not punished as badly. But it's good practice to look to set up a good catch for reinforcements for Venator Bow so you don't end up like this. Now, before I start Wave 4, I've got to run downstairs and grab something to eat.
Aw, bummer, dude. A totally empty fridge. Really wish I had some fresh chef-prepared meals right now.
The power of cinema magic.
Whoa, radical! Chef-prepared meals!
If you're just a guy like me who loves playing old-school RuneScape, you know how nice it is to order a meal to your house so you can spend more time flicking a Manticore and less time in the kitchen. But food delivery services can be expensive, and most of the time the quality is less than desirable. Thankfully, I've teamed up with Factor75 to solve this issue. They deliver fresh, chef-prepared, ready-to-eat meals right to my doorstep every week. With over 35 different menu options to choose from, there's something for everyone, and you can customize your plan according to your diet with preferences like Protein Plus, Calorie Smart, Keto, Poultry, Fish, and Veggie, and much, much more. I tried the Honey Butter Diced Chicken this week, and it was delicious. They also offer a load of snack and drink options, like smoothies, juices, small bites, and even breakfast. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, head to Factor75.com and select your plan, preferences, and how many meals you'd like to eat per week for some amazing and convenient food. Don't forget to use my code on screen, COLDMAR50, and get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video. Let's head right back into Wave 4. So before Wave 4 starts, I actually want to go over a mechanic that not a lot of people are aware of, and that's manipulating what invocations you are presented. Most invocations can be leveled up 3 times, like how I've got Blasphemy and Doom already in the process. But we're going to be picking Relentlessness here. If you're in the process of upgrading an invocation, the game is more likely to suggest it as an option in the future waves over something you haven't selected yet. Anyway, I already know the way I handle this wave is not how I'd handle it in modern times, but we'll look at how it plays out. It starts like waves 2 and 3 did, and I remember why I did this opener now. So we're doing the typical Venator Bow out the Fremenix and Shaman, but if you look at the Manticore, this gives us better control with syncing their attacks up. How I handle it now is the same way, but running to the Manticore first instead. This one's not as straightforward since the Shaman's line of sight is 5 tiles shorter than that of the Manticore's, so you may end up with some awkward timings that are less desirable to set up. But overall, the solution ends up being a bit more consistent. For one, the Manticore's death animation is the longest out of all the monsters in the Colosseum, so having it die not last is a good thing. Second, this saves our special attack for the Shaman. The Scythe is our best way of dealing with NPCs, except for the Shaman since he's only 1 by 1. The differences are minimal between both of these solves, but killing the Shaman last with 3 Bone Claw specs is still faster overall. So, Wave 5 we're going to be starting not in the center anymore, and instead we're moving over towards our Chaos Runes we dropped earlier. Now, this is 2 tiles north of the popularized B5 tile, so there's a chance to spawn a mob just south of you now. But this gives us the opportunity to first strike the Berserker and then get behind our northwest pillar right after. So in this scenario, the Fremenix spawn just a little too far to the east, and this can happen, so I guess it's a good thing it happened now so we can go over it. This is something you should be prepared for at the start of every wave going forward, that there's a chance you'll be dragged forward and potentially forced to tank hits. Wave 5 and 6, if you have less than 40 hit points, then it's best to just start on the B5 tile. And the same for Wave 7+ if you have less than 60 hit points for the large mages. In this case, however, the NPCs that attack right away are so far back that we don't tank anything, so small win there. And we can wait for them to come forward a bit. Now, T-bowing is fun in cases like this, where there's a setup you have in mind involved. And it looks like the setup here is pretty nice. So we have both our remaining mobs situated in the sweet spot. When reinforcements eventually show up, they'll catch themselves on the north side of the Ranger, and we can Venator Bow everything down. And it works out nicely for us, because when the Ranger dies, we can immediately click the Shaman and get auto-pathed. Yeah, just like that, and have a nice cluster of mobs here. All we have to do is make sure the one with the highest HP is our primary target. Ooh, one thing I do nowadays is cases like this where the last mob is a Shaman. I typically now just use the Burning Claw spec for reasons like this. If I had spec there, that saves about 3 seconds, potentially, if the T-bow decides to noodle, just like it did there. So we get a pretty average wave 6 setup here. We want to clear out the Manticore first, as we're probably going to use that Ranger behind him to set up a reinforcement Venator clump. Now, once it dies, you can off-tick the Ranger and Major in one of 2 different ways. The one I did here is valid, but I prefer a bit of a different one now. You start on this tile, and run 4 west to this tile. Then 1 southeast, and that will off-tick the Shaman and Ranger to the south. I'll play a visual so you can get the idea. This one I did in the replay does work, but the one we didn't do would have allowed us to have a comfier time setting up. This, what I'm doing right here, bad. Really, really bad. I don't know what I was thinking here. Knowing me, probably not a lot at all. But I'm sure most of you see the Venator bow setup. It's right there. It's so free. This one's fine if they're the only 2 mobs left, but I'm just hating myself watching this back. Okay, so after that poorly played Wave 6, we have an okay entry into the land of Wave 7+. Oh boy, okay, something new we can talk about here. Back here, I didn't use shift-click for any monsters whatsoever, and you can see the problem with that. Something I do nowadays is I've manually changed my shift-click to every mob in the Colosseum to walk here. Except for the Berserker. I don't have shift-click to walk under NPCs on by default, so for those of you that do, you may have to do some finagling around with your rune-like settings. Point is, in this scenario right here, I'd be getting that first strike on the Berserker and not hitting Boxing Joe over here. So the start of this wave is already a disaster. Let's see how the rest of it plays out. Oh, jeez. Okay, ignore the Fremenix. Let's talk about the stack we're running into. The Ranger is far off on the east side of the northeast pillar. If you're autopathing like I'm about to do here, this will cause him to see you 1 tick after everything that's in front of you, like this. Now, the Minotaur will come out and heal something at the 42-second mark if it's not in melee distance of us, and it looks like I'm positioning myself here to catch the Minotaur, so he doesn't do that. And the rest of the wave plays out as normal, so let's go into wave 8. So we lost a tick here, and the whole room attacks us because of it, unfortunately. But we have a 0% chance of dying to it, so it's not the end of the world. And the Manticore was our friend at least, so this is going to be a very robust wave. Wave 7 and onward are somewhat boring just because there's not really any room for Venator plays aside from the reinforcements on Wave 10 and 11. So it just boils down to clearing out everything in a proper order, and we got a pretty blessed setup here. So one of the main goals in these later waves is to clear out as much as you reasonably can on the east side of the pillar, then move to the west side and clear out the mobs on the south. So in this setup, if the Ranger was still alive, the Minotaur would not be able to see him and heal him. After we clear out the south mobs, we can just move to the Minotaur and clear up everything else. Ooh, another big problem with me right here. Clearing out the Manticore last is a cardinal sin. The Manticore has the longest death animation out of all of the mobs in the Colosseum, with the exception of the final boss. The same thing goes for the snakes in the Inferno, so we want to be clearing these things out not last, unless our life absolutely depends on it for some reason. Okay, so Wave 9, pretty chill wave. As you can see, this opener gets us to hit that Berserker, and you can see nothing was able to attack us since the Manticores didn't riv up there. Bit unlucky with the orb choice since that Ranger saw us 1 tick later, as we talked about before. The fix for this is easy. You just turn the corner and lose 1 tick to sync them back up, and it should just be your typical spank and tank till the end here. I don't like this going for the Ranger second here. I should be on the Manticore. Oh boy, yikes. You guys didn't see that. So again, same mistake, clearing out the Manticore last. I'll hammer this point home as much as I can. do not kill the Manticores last. It's good practice to remember. Okay, wave 10, we get the good opener. We get that southwest spawn that you don't get starting on the B5 tile. This is the one disadvantage of starting where we do. You'll have more things to deal with on your statistical safe side, so playing like this is going to be a bit more demanding. Now, north side we get a bit of an awkward scenario, and we have to hope for a coin flip here. You see that the Manticore is going to be delayed by 1 tick, and we'll need to turn corner like last wave to calibrate it properly. And I'm just Yugi Moto, I guess, so the fix is easy. Like I said, just turn quarters, and we do a single attack on that South Ranger, just so we're not wasting ticks. Then we can turn back around and work on clearing out this Manticore on the north end. So real quick, as I mentioned before, this south spawn you can see as a disadvantage for playing safe, but with speed, we actually want it down there. We want stuff on the south side to attack while we're waiting for the Minotaur to pop out. That's great for us. So this actually was a pretty blessed wave, all things considered. Ooh, okay, we're going to talk about this right here, because this is bad. Now, luckily, it didn't matter in this case. As you can see, the Serpent off-ticked from the Ranger naturally, and that's great. But the way I tried to line them up is not the best. Instead of this tile, I want to be running out to this one, to northwest from where I'm at right now. The Serpent will have line of sight a lot sooner from this position. Anyway, after the Ranger Man dies, we actually have a Venator set up from here. From this position, we can shoot diagonally at NPCs, but they can do the same to us. Now, remember what I mentioned about the Minotaur before? If we're not in melee distance, he'll heal NPCs. These corner tiles count. So this setup is golden. And before we get on it, it's important to clear out any Rangers on us, because they'll toss javelins, we'll move, and the Minotaur will then heal the Shaman. And I'm clearing the Ranger first again. Again, bad move. I swear I've lost at least 5 seconds to bad mob prioritizations here. Okay, wave 11. Okay, good opener, so let's talk about this move here. I have the HP to tank a single mage hit, so this is perfectly fine. The point of this is to just draw that South Manticore up to the wall so I can scythe it. What I don't like is what I'm doing after. There's a way to still follow the rule of clearing a north mob first. Manticores, big mages, rangers, they all have a vision score of 15 tiles. So if we count here, we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. This tile right here is 16 tiles away from the mob in the back. You can step down and sync the Manticores together, and this is still close enough for the mage to see you. After you step down, the next tick, you'll need to move to the east and flick appropriately. This will give you a nice rotation of just mage, range, melee, and then gap for 2 ticks, but will also cause you to lose a few ticks to set it up. The other solve will lose you no time, but puts the ranger in that 2-tick gap I mentioned earlier. You'll start on this middle tile right here, and L movement to this one while praying ranged. 1 tick earlier than you would have moved for that previous example. This makes it so only the back ranger has line of sight for just 1 tick, and that's all that matters. Right after the ranger declares his attack, the Manticores and Major will hit you at the same time. Now, both these setups, of course, involve syncing both the Manticores to be declaring their attacks at the same time. Anyway, I hope that was all understandable, because I didn't do any of that. And now I'm stuck awkwardly standing here for what looks to be 10 seconds of just time that I'm wasting. This is exactly why you want to be hitting those east mobs first. If we cleared out the east Manticore, we could be hitting the south one while we're waiting, and we're just sitting pretty. Okay, at least this Minotaur setup happened. I wanted to talk about this one, which we didn't get last wave. This right here is the exact reason why I will always say that Northwest Pillar is better than Southwest. Look at this beautiful 3-bounce Venator we're getting here. Southwest Pillar can't do this. If you're on the Southwest Pillar, these mobs aren't going to line up and will still be in line with the pillar, and Venator will not be able to find its 3rd shot of them. So the L movement setup I mentioned earlier, we did there. You can get a visual on how it plays out. Everything's off-ticked, and we can get 0 damage here, and I'm actually clearing the Manticores early for a change. Oh, man, that burning claw. Okay, so that claw, you'd want to be using on a ranger here, or the damage over time effect. It one-shot the major, which is great, but it's just bad practice is all. Okay, so we have 70 special attack going into soul. Something to note is while your special attack meter regeneration is paused between other waves, it's completely reset when you start the soul wave for some reason. So if this is a good soul fight and under 2 minutes, we want to do the Maul spec and a Dragon Claw spec to make the best use of our meter. Let's talk about 5 ticking soul. There are some favorable movements you can do to manipulate Soul's auto attack timer, and it's a lot easier to set up than you think. The first hit here with the Maul, you don't need to worry about it. Your second attack is synced up perfectly, so you can step back normally. But what I do after I scythe right there, walking back for 2 ticks, or running, doesn't matter. Just immediately after you swing, move away for 2 ticks, and that will get you a good scythe timing in pretty much every scenario. You can get fancy and move all the time, but 2 steps back is just the simplest way to do it. Oh, what is that? I've missed a tick. What am I doing here? So this part's good. This shows attack, 2 steps back, attack, step back, and it all lines up with soul. So the rest of the fight is pretty straightforward, aside from the 2 step back. This is just your typical spank and tank until it dies. So yeah, that's the end of the run. Hopefully you all got something out of it, whether it's knowledge on how to tackle the Colosseum a bit faster, or just laughing at my expense. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, consider leaving a like and perhaps subscribing. I'd appreciate it big time. I've got a brand new series coming out soon, and it's going to be a banger. I'll see you all then.